The mysterious Heiress and the unexpected human. The space station floated in the silent darkness of space, its lights flickering like a dying candle. The emergency alarm echoed through the empty corridors. Footsteps, fast and desperate, broke the silence. Princess Alira of the Zenari Empire ran, her heart racing. Behind her, shadows moved. She glanced over her shoulder. 2 bounty hunters, tall and armored, chased her. The throne must be protected at all costs, she reminded herself. Alira turned a corner and reached a small airlock. Her fingers trembled as she activated the control panel. The door hissed open. She stepped inside, but the bounty hunters were close. One raised a plasma rifle. Alira ducked as a bolt of red energy missed her by inches. The door closed just in time. The small escape pod launched into the dark void. Through the window, Alira saw the bounty hunters standing there, watching her escape. They were not ordinary mercenaries. These were Cal's men. Her cousin was making his move. Alira leaned back and whispered, "I need a human. The prophecy says only a human heart can secure the throne." On Mars, Captain Jack Riker sat on his porch, watching the twin moons rise over the dusty horizon. He sipped his coffee and sighed. Life was quiet now. Too quiet. After 10 years as a space marine, he had retired. No more battles. No more surprises. His peace was broken when his comm device beeped. He frowned. No one called him anymore. Unknown signal. Jack answered. A woman's face appeared. Her golden eyes and delicate features were unmistakably alien. Her voice was urgent. "Captain Jack Riker." He hesitated. "Who's asking?" "My name is Alira. I need your help." Jack's instincts screamed danger. "Sorry, wrong guy." He ended the call. The device beeped again. Jack ignored it. Minutes later, his house shook with a loud boom. He grabbed his old blaster and ran outside. A sleek silver ship had landed near his barn. The hatch opened, and the woman from the call stepped out. Jack raised his weapon. "Stay right there." Alira lifted her hands. "Please listen. I'm being hunted. My enemies will come here next. If they find me, Earth will be in danger too." "Why me?" Jack asked. "Because you're human. And because the prophecy says only a human mate can secure the throne and stop the coming war." "Mate?" Jack lowered the blaster slightly. "Whoa, I'm not marrying anyone, lady." Before Alira could answer, the sky roared. 3 black ships appeared, hovering above. Spotlights flashed down. The ground shook as soldiers in heavy armor descended. "Cal's hunters," Alira said, her voice tense. "Get inside," Jack ordered. He fired his blaster at the closest soldier. The energy bolt hit the soldier's chest, barely slowing him down. "Damn it," Jack muttered. Alira ran toward the ship while Jack covered her. One of the soldiers raised a launcher. Jack tackled Alira to the ground as a missile hit the barn, sending debris flying. "Can you fly this thing?" Jack shouted. "Yes." Alira scrambled to her feet and ran to the ship. Jack followed, firing at the soldiers. A bolt grazed his arm. He clenched his teeth against the pain. The ship's hatch closed as the engines roared to life. From the cockpit, Alira's hands danced over the controls. The ship shot upward, dodging enemy fire. Jack collapsed into a seat, breathing hard. The enemy ships gave chase. Alira pulled the controls sharply. The small ship spun and weaved through Mars' thin atmosphere. Red bolts streaked past the window. One hit the rear engine. Alarms blared. "We can't outrun them," Alira said. "Can you go into hyperspace?" Jack asked. "Not without coordinates." "Give me the controls." Alira hesitated but then moved aside. Jack's hands moved with the familiarity of an old pilot. He steered the ship toward Phobos, Mars' nearest moon. The enemy ships followed. "What's the plan?" Alira asked. "Surprise." Jack accelerated straight toward the moon's rocky surface. The enemy ships closed in, confident of their kill. At the last second, Jack pulled up. The enemy ships tried to follow but were too slow. Two crashed into the moon's surface. The third ship fired wildly but lost sight of them in the moon's shadow. Jack engaged the stealth systems. The cabin went dark. They drifted in silence. "Nice flying," Alira said, breathing heavily. "You're welcome," Jack said. His arm burned where the bolt had hit him. "Now tell me what the hell is going on." Alira looked out the window, her expression troubled. "My cousin Cal is trying to take the throne. If he succeeds, he'll start a war. The only way to stop him is for me to claim the throne first. But I can't do it alone. I need a human partner. The ancient law requires it. And you picked me. You're a hero. You saved Earth during the Orion invasion. You're known across the stars as the Iron Captain." Jack shook his head. "That was a long time ago. War is coming, Captain. Earth will not be safe if Cal wins." Before Jack could respond, a holographic message appeared on the dashboard. A pale, scarred face stared at them. "Prince Cal." "Hello, Captain Riker," Cal said, his voice like ice. "Hand over the princess, and I'll spare your planet. Refuse, and Earth burns." Jack and Alira exchanged a worried glance. The reluctant hero and the deadly pursuit, lengthy and unique, 1,800+ words. The silence inside the ship was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the stealth engines and the holographic presence of Prince Cal. His pale, scarred face hovered midair, eyes cold as frozen stars. His thin lips curled into a smile that held no warmth. "Hand over the princess, Captain Riker," Cal repeated, "or Earth burns." Jack Riker felt a chill crawl down his spine. The threat wasn't an empty one. He'd seen what advanced alien empires were capable of. Earth might have survived the Orion invasion a decade ago, but they were no match for the Zanari war fleets under Cal's command. He clenched his jaw and met the prince's gaze. "You're bluffing," Jack said. His voice was steady, but his hand hovered near his blaster. Cal chuckled softly. "Am I? Look outside your window." Jack hesitated, then turned toward the ship's sensors. Alira, standing beside him, tapped the console. The screen displayed Earth, a massive black warship, unlike anything Jack had ever seen, hovered near the planet's orbit. Long, spiked arms extended from its body like the limbs of a predatory insect. Blue energy crackled around its core. "The Obsidian Dagger," Alira whispered. "It's Cal's flagship. It carries a planetary disruptor." Jack tightened his grip on the console. A planetary disruptor could disintegrate entire cities. Cal wasn't bluffing. "1 hour, Captain," Cal said. "Surrender the princess, or I pull the trigger." The hologram vanished. The cabin fell into tense silence. Jack exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the impossible decision. Alira broke the silence. "We can't give in. If we don't, Earth burns," Jack said. He stood and paced the narrow cabin. The metallic floor echoed with each step. His mind raced through the options, but none were good. Alira's eyes hardened. "We'll find a way. My people believe in the prophecy. The throne can only be secured with a human heart. That's why Cal wants me. To marry me, force me to sit on the throne beside him. But if I bond with you first, his claim is void." "Yeah," Jack muttered, running a hand through his hair. "You're talking about a political marriage with a stranger to save a planet. No pressure." "It's not just politics," Alira said softly. "It's survival. For my people and yours." A faint beep interrupted their conversation. The sensors showed Cal's hunter ships sweeping through the moon's shadow, searching for their cloaked vessel. Jack frowned. They had maybe 10 minutes before being detected. "We need a plan," Jack said. "Fast." Alira leaned over the navigation controls. "Zeneris Prime is the only place we can claim the throne. The High Council must witness the bonding. If we get there first, Cal loses his legal claim." Jack narrowed his eyes at the map. "Zeneris Prime is 2 star systems away. We'll never make it without being caught. Unless..." Alara hesitated. There's a smuggler's wormhole near Jupiter. Dangerous, unstable, but faster than Cal's routes. Dangerous and unstable sounds like our only shot. Jack dropped into the pilot's seat. Strap in. Alara secured herself as Jack powered the engines. The ship trembled as the stealth systems disengage. Bright red warning lights flared across the console. Here they come, Jack muttered. The enemy ships locked on immediately. Plasma fire streaked through the darkness. Jack jerked the controls, making the ship dive toward Jupiter at breakneck speed. The hunters followed, their weapons lighting up the void. Hang on, Jack shouted as they entered the gas giant's gravitational pull. The ship groaned from the strain. Jupiter's swirling storms filled the viewport, massive cyclones of crimson and gold. The hunters didn't back off. One ship fired a missile. The targeting alarm screeched. Missile inbound, Alara yelled. Jack slammed the controls hard to the left, spinning the ship into a chaotic spiral. The missile followed. Deploy chaff, he ordered. Alara hit the defense controls. Small drones burst from the ship, releasing electromagnetic pulses. The missile wobbled, confused for a second, then locked back on. Damn smart tech, Jack growled, switching to manual defense. He pulled the ship into a sharp descent, skimming the upper atmosphere. The hull vibrated violently as they pierced the storm layers. The missile closed in. Through the thick clouds, Jack spotted the faint shimmer of the wormhole. Brace yourselves, he shouted. He launched 2 decoy flares and pulled up. The missile followed the flares, then exploded just as the ship shot into the wormhole. The wormhole jump was pure chaos. The stars stretched and twisted. The ship shook like it was being torn apart. Jack gripped the controls, his knuckles white. Alara gasped as reality blurred. Then, with a bone-jarring jolt, they emerged into calm space. A pale blue sun shone ahead. Zenaris Prime, Alara whispered, relief in her voice. Jack exhaled shakily. One piece. Barely. Suddenly, alarms blared. What's wrong now? Jack snapped. Alara scanned the system. Her face paled. A tracking beacon. Cal's hunters tagged us. They're coming. Jack cursed. How long? Minutes. Then let's not be here. Jack powered the engines toward Zenaris Prime. The sleek blue-green planet grew larger on the screen. As they descended toward the planet's surface, Alara tapped into the planetary network. The High Council is in session, she said, but they're divided. Many fear Cal. Yeah, tyrants have that effect, Jack muttered. The ship touched down near the Temple of Unity, an ancient structure of silver and crystal that shimmered in the sunlight. Jack strapped on his blaster, heart racing. They sprinted toward the temple. The great hall inside was massive, with marble floors and glowing columns. At the center stood the council, 10 alien elders in flowing robes. They turned as Alara and Jack approached. Princess Alara, the lead elder said, "Why do you bring a human here?" "To fulfill the ancient law," Alara declared. "I claim my right to the throne, bonded to this human, Captain Jack Riker." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. One spoke, his voice sharp. "You cannot invoke the law without the high crown." "Then give me the crown," Alara said. Before the elder could respond, a deafening explosion shook the temple. The ceiling cracked. Debris rained down. The main doors exploded inward, and armored soldiers marched through. Behind them came Prince Cal, his scared face twisted with satisfaction. "My dear cousin," Cal said, stepping forward, "you've led me right to the council. How convenient." His cold eyes shifted to Jack. "And you, the stubborn human." "Yeah, I get that a lot," Jack said, aiming his blaster. Cal's soldiers raised their weapons. Jack fired first. The plasma bolt hit Cal's energy shield, shimmering harmlessly. Cal extended his hand. A pulse of energy blasted across the hall, knocking Jack to the ground. Alara tried to reach Jack, but Cale seized her wrist. "You can't stop this, Alara," Cale hissed. "The throne is mine." He turned to his soldiers. "Kill the human." The soldiers aimed their rifles at Jack. His blaster was broken. He braced for the end. But suddenly, the hall shook with a deep, resonant hum. The marble floor split open. From beneath, a golden pedestal rose, holding an ancient, glowing crown. The high crown. The elders gasped. "The crown responds to the true heir," one whispered. Cal's face contorted with rage. He yanked Alara toward the pedestal. Jack saw her struggling, and despite the pain, lunged forward. He tackled Cal. They crashed to the floor, fists flying. Cal's strength was unnatural. He slammed Jack's head against the ground. Alara reached for the crown. Her fingertips brushed it. The crown flared with brilliant light, blinding everyone. Cal roared and released Jack. He fired his weapon at Alara. No, Jack leaped between them. The energy bolt struck him in the chest. He collapsed. Alara screamed. The crown floated from the pedestal and settled on her head. Her eyes glowed with golden light. She extended her hand, and Cal was thrown across the hall by an invisible force. She knelt beside Jack. His breathing was shallow. "Stay with me," she whispered. Jack managed a weak smile. "Did we win?" "You saved us," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. The cosmic chase and a shocking betrayal, lengthy and unique. 2,000+ words. The throne room of Xenaris Prime was bathed in the golden glow of the high crown as it hovered gently above Alara's head. The ancient artifact pulsed with soft, rhythmic light, reacting to the princess's emotions. Fear, relief, and sorrow swirled within her as she cradled Jack Riker's unconscious body. His breathing was shallow. The wound on his chest crackled with residual plasma energy. The High Council members stood in stunned silence. Never before had the crown chosen its heir so dramatically. One of the elders, a tall figure with crystalline skin named Eldraz, stepped forward. "The crown has chosen," Eldraz said, voice echoing through the vast chamber. "Princess Alara is the rightful empress of the Xenari Empire." The council murmured in agreement, but their eyes kept drifting toward Jack. A human. A stranger. The ancient law was clear. To secure the throne's power, the heir must bond with a human heart. But this was not just any human. This was the man who'd taken a plasma bolt to protect her. "Summon the medics," Alara ordered, voice breaking slightly. "Save him." 2 medics rushed in with portable stasis equipment. They scanned Jack's injury, their expressions grim. "Plasma corruption in the chest cavity," one medic said. "It's spreading." "Can you fix it?" Alara demanded. The medic hesitated. "Not here. We need a regeneration pod on a capital-class ship." Alara's eyes darkened with resolve. "Take him to the Eterna Star. Activate its medical bay. I'll be there shortly." The medics lifted Jack onto an anti-gravity stretcher and hurried away. Alara stood and turned to the council. "My cousin, Prince Cal, has escaped," she said. "He will return with greater force. We must prepare." The council exchanged nervous glances. Eldraz spoke again. "The fleet is fractured, Empress. Many high-ranking officers support Cal. He controls the Obsidian Dagger and its planetary disruptor." "And we have the High Crown," Alara responded. "The people will follow it. We must rally them before Cal regroups." She swept from the room, determination in her stride. The crown glowed brighter, as if echoing her resolve. Aboard the Eterna Star, Medical Bay. The soft hum of the medical pod filled the sterile, dimly lit chamber. Jack floated inside the transparent pod, his chest wrapped in glowing medical seals. Alara stood beside the pod, watching his face. He looked peaceful now, but she remembered the pain in his eyes when he'd shielded her from Cal's blast. "Why did you do it, Captain?" she thought. "You didn't even believe in this mission." Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft hiss of the door opening. Zara Kesh, her personal bodyguard, entered. Zara was a wiry, sharp-eyed woman with dark hair braided into a crown around her head. "Empress," Zara greeted with a respectful nod. "Report," Alira said, not taking her eyes off Jack. "Hell's forces have withdrawn from Zenaris Prime, but we intercepted comm signals. He's regrouping near the Iridian Rift. Intelligence suggests he's calling for reinforcements from the Syndicate clans." "The Syndicate," Alira muttered. "Pirates, smugglers, mercenaries. He's building an army." Zara nodded. "We've activated the Loyalist fleets, but morale is low. Many fear Cal's disruptor weapon." Alira turned from the pod. "I want every loyal ship recalled to Zenith Station. We'll address them directly. I want to show them the crown. And Captain Riker." "Captain Riker." Zara raised an eyebrow. "He risked his life to save me," Alira said softly. "The people need to see that a human believes in this fight. The prophecy says a human heart will secure the throne. And here he is. He will inspire them." Zara hesitated. "If he survives." Alira's eyes hardened. "He will." The awakening. Hours later, Jack's eyes fluttered open. The pod had drained, leaving him lying on a soft medical bed. His chest still ached, but the burning pain was gone. The first thing he saw was Alira sitting beside him. "You're awake," she said, relief in her voice. Jack groaned. "Yeah, lucky me." He looked around. "Where are we?" "The Eternus Star. You're safe. For now." Memories hit Jack like a freight train. The temple, Kale, the plasma blast. Did we stop him? "For now," Alira said. "But he's regrouping. We need to move fast." Jack shifted in the bed and winced. "Great. Another war. Just what I signed up for." "You didn't sign up for this," Alira said softly. "You stepped in to save me anyway." Jack shrugged, uncomfortable. "You were gonna get fried. What was I supposed to do? Walk away?" Alira smiled faintly. "Most would have." The door opened and Zara entered. "Empress, the fleet is gathering at Zenith Station. They're waiting for your speech." Alira stood. "I need to address them. Jack, can you stand?" "Yeah, sure," Jack grunted, swinging his legs off the bed. His muscles ached, but he forced himself upright. Alira extended a hand to help, and after a moment's hesitation, he accepted it. Zenith Station. The Grand Hall. The station's Grand Hall was packed with thousands of soldiers, officers, and citizens. Holographic cameras broadcast the event across the Empire. The air buzzed with nervous energy. The Empire had stood at the edge of collapse for too long. They needed hope. Alira stepped onto the stage, the high crown glowing above her head. Jack followed, dressed in a borrowed navy blue uniform. He felt every eye on him and resisted the urge to turn around and walk away. Alira raised her hand. The crowd quieted. "My people," she began, voice strong and clear. "The Empire stands at a crossroads. My cousin, Prince Kale, seeks to seize the throne through fear and destruction. He has threatened Earth, my human ally's homeworld. He has threatened all of us." The crowd murmured. Images of the obsidian dagger appeared on the large holographic screen behind her. "But we are not powerless," Alira continued. "The High Crown has chosen me as your rightful empress. And beside me stands Captain Jack Riker of Earth, a man who risked everything to protect me, to protect our future. The prophecy speaks of a human heart securing the throne. That heart is here. He is living proof that unity will save us." The crowd stirred, hope igniting in their eyes. "But we cannot win by words alone," Alira said. "We must act. We must fight. We will face Cal's fleet at the Iridian Rift. We will fight for our freedom, for our survival." The crowd erupted in cheers. Soldiers raised their weapons in salute. Jack shifted uncomfortably as Alira stepped back beside him. "You're good at speeches," Jack murmured. "I learned from human history," she said with a smile. You people love your grand speeches. The betrayal. The fleet mobilized within hours. Hundreds of ships surged toward the Iridian Rift. Jack was given command of the Vanguard Spear, a sleek warship armed with advanced rail cannons and plasma shields. Alira commanded the flagship. As they neared the rift, sensor alarms blared. Enemy ships incoming, the officer announced. Dozens. No, hundreds. Cal's forces emerged from the rift in a crescent formation. The obsidian dagger led the charge, its spiked silhouette dominating the view screen. Open a channel, Alira ordered. Cal's face appeared, smug and confident. Ah, dear cousin, I see you've brought the human again. Brave but pointless. This battle is already lost. Alira's eyes narrowed. The Empire stands united against you. Cal's smile deepened. Does it? Suddenly, alarms blared from every console. Half the fleet turned and fired on their own ships. Explosions blossomed across the formation. No, Alira gasped. Jack slammed his fist on the console. They've betrayed us. Cal laughed. I made a deal with the syndicate clans. Half your forces were already mine before you even arrived. The obsidian dagger powered its disruptor weapon. Blue energy crackled across its surface, aimed at Alira's flagship. Jack's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. And the enemy's strongest weapon was charging. The hidden rebel fleet. Lengthy and unique. 2,200 plus words. The battlefield of the Iridian Rift had turned into a blazing graveyard. Wreckage from loyalist ships drifted through space, glowing with the fading embers of plasma fire. The faint hum of alarms filled the bridge of the Vanguard Spear, mingling with the heavy silence of shock. Jack Riker gripped the command console, his eyes locked on the enemy fleet. The obsidian dagger, Prince Cal's monstrous warship, loomed ahead, crackling with the ominous energy of its planetary disruptor. Half the Zenari fleet had turned traitor. The syndicate clans, mercenaries, and pirates hired by Cal had disabled the Empire's defenses from within. Chaos reigned across the comm channels as officers tried to regroup, but the battle was already tilting in Cal's favor. Status report, Jack barked, voice sharp. Lieutenant Sarek, a blue-skinned Zenari officer, swallowed nervously. Shields at 30%. Engines compromised. Plasma reserves are low. What about the flagship? Jack's eyes darted to the Eterna star, where Alira was stationed. The High Crown made her the Empire's last hope, and Cal's prime target. Shields are holding, Sarek said, but barely. The disruptor's core is charging. Estimated full power in 3 minutes. 3 minutes until the obsidian dagger fired its weapon, a weapon that could disintegrate the flagship and the Empress along with it. Jack's pulse quickened. He activated the comlink. Alira, do you copy? The holoscreen flickered, then showed Alira's face. Smoke and sparks danced in the background. Her golden eyes were fierce, but a trickle of blood ran down her temple. I'm here, she said, but we're pinned down. The disruptor will fire soon. Jack, we need to retreat. Retreat. Jack shook his head. Cal will chase us to Earth. We need another option. We don't have one, Alira said, voice tight. The fleet's broken. We're outgunned. Jack gripped the console, jaw clenched. His mind raced. He remembered a conversation from years ago, during his military days. His old commander once spoke about hidden rebel catches left behind after the Orion invasion. The Iridian Rift, Jack muttered. The rebels had a fleet hidden here once. Alira frowned. A rebel fleet. Buried in the Rift's asteroid belt, Jack said, hope igniting in his chest. Old warships. They might still be there. Alira's eyes narrowed as she processed the gamble. You're sure? No, Jack admitted, but it's our best shot. Go, she ordered. I'll hold them off. Jack hesitated, guilt twisting in his chest. Leaving her here felt wrong. But she was right. They needed firepower to win. I'm coming back, he said. Find that fleet, she replied, cutting the connection. Sarek, Jack commanded, set course for the asteroid field. Maximum burn. The race through the asteroid belt. The Vanguard spear shot toward the asteroid belt. Behind them, the obsidian dagger unleashed waves of plasma fire. Asteroids shattered into fiery shards, and debris battered the ship's hull. Jack gripped the controls, weaving through the maze of floating rocks. Proximity alert. Sarek shouted. A Syndicate destroyer appeared from behind an asteroid, guns blazing. Plasma bolts slammed into the shields, sending sparks cascading from the ceiling. Return fire, Jack ordered. The Vanguard spear fired its forward cannons. Blue beams sliced through the vacuum, striking the destroyer's engines. The enemy ship shuddered, then exploded in a blinding burst. Keep moving, Jack said, heart pounding. We're close. They dove deeper into the asteroid field, where thick clusters of ice and rock blocked the enemy sensors. The ship's scanners pinged faintly. Sir, Sarek said, eyes wide. I'm detecting metallic signatures. Lots of them. Jack's breath caught. Magnify. The display zoomed in, revealing a massive asteroid partially hollowed out. Inside lay a dormant fleet of old warships. Angular, heavily armored, and scared from past battles. Their engines were cold, but their weapons glinted faintly under layers of dust and ice. There they are, Jack said. Rebel Ghost Fleet. Reactivating the Ghost Fleet. The Vanguard spear docked with the largest ship, the Iron Resolve. The ship was ancient, its corridors covered in frost. Jack and a small team suited up and boarded through a maintenance hatch. The air was thin. Jack's boots echoed as he moved through the dark hallways toward the control center. The bridge's controls were dark, but the core systems were intact. Sarek, power it up, Jack ordered. The lieutenant connected the portable fusion cells. Lights flickered, and the control panels hummed softly. On screen, ancient diagnostic messages scrolled by in Zenari script. This fleet was mothballed after the Orion invasion, Sarek said, but the weapon systems still look functional. Good, Jack said. He activated the comm system. Broadcast fleet-wide activation protocols. The console beeped as old systems came to life across the asteroid belt. Engines rumbled. Weapons powered up. Automated drones flew from docking bays, removing asteroid debris. One by one, the ancient warships lit up. Sir, Sarek said, voice awed. We have 20 heavy cruisers, 15 destroyers, and a Dreadnought-class flagship, all operational. Jack's lips twisted into a grim smile. Let's give Kale a surprise he won't forget. Set coordinates for the Rift battlefield. Maximum speed. The last stand at the Rift. Back at the battlefield, the situation had worsened. The Eterna star was surrounded, shields flickering. The obsidian dagger's disruptor weapon glowed with blinding blue energy, nearing full charge. Alira stood on the bridge, gripping the control console. Zara was beside her, scanning the enemy's movements. The disruptor will fire in 60 seconds, Zara reported. Redirect power to the front shields, Alira commanded, and broadcast a final warning to Kel. The comm screen crackled, then showed Kel's face. He lounged in his command chair, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Hello, dear cousin, Kel said. I do hope you're ready to say your goodbyes. This is your last chance, Kel, Alira said, voice cold. Stand down or face the wrath of the Empire. Cable laughed. The Empire is already mine. Goodbye, Alira. The disruptor cannon hummed louder. Its barrel glowed white-hot as energy built toward critical mass. Brace for impact, Alira shouted. The cannon fired. A colossal beam of crackling energy surged toward the Eterna star. Alira gripped the console, knowing the shields wouldn't hold. But then, from the asteroid belt, dozens of ships burst into view. The Iron Resolve led the formation. They fired in unison. Bright blue lances of plasma intersected the disruptor beam. Energy collided, creating a massive explosion that rocked the entire battlefield. On the Eterna star, the comm crackled. Jack's voice came through. "Need a hand, Empress." Alira's heart leaped. "Jack." "Ghost Fleet reporting for duty," Jack said. "Let's finish this." The battle turns. The rebel fleet surged forward, targeting the Syndicate ships with brutal efficiency. Old but powerful cannons tore through enemy ranks. Jack piloted the Iron Resolve straight toward the Obsidian Dagger. "Target the disruptor core," he ordered. "Locked on," Sarek confirmed. "Fire." The ship's rail cannons fired a volley of hyper-dense rounds. The first shots weakened the dagger's shields. The second volley hit the disruptor core directly. The weapon exploded, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. On the Eterna star, Alira saw the enemy fleet falter. The Syndicate ships, seeing their flagship disabled, turned to flee. "Don't let them escape," she commanded. "Pursue and destroy." The Loyalist forces surged after the retreating ships. Explosions lit the rift like fireworks. The Empire had turned the tide. The final confrontation. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Jack watched as the Obsidian Dagger drifted, heavily damaged but not destroyed. He leaned toward the comms. "Hail Cal." The prince's face appeared. His expression was no longer smug. His hair was disheveled, his scared face contorted with rage. "This isn't over," Cal hissed. "Yeah, it is," Jack said. "Surrender, or we finish the job." Cal sneered. "Never." The dagger's engines flared. It turned toward Earth. Jack's heart dropped. "He's going for Earth," Jack shouted. "All ships, pursue." The fleet moved, but the Obsidian Dagger engaged a hidden wormhole drive, vanishing in a flash of blue light. Jack slammed his fist on the console. "Damn it." Alira's face appeared on the comm. "He's going for Earth," she said, voice grim. "Yeah," Jack agreed. "And we're the only ones who can stop him." The throne planet infiltration. The stars streaked past the Iron Resolve as it tore through space at maximum speed. The Zenari Ghost Fleet followed in tight formation, engines burning hot as they pursued Prince Kale and the Obsidian Dagger. Earth lay ahead, vulnerable, unprepared, and unaware of the nightmare speeding toward it. On the bridge, Captain Jack Riker stood at the helm, eyes locked on the holographic display. The enemy warship was a faint red blip ahead, moving fast. Kel's ship had taken heavy damage, but it was still operational, and still deadly. "Distance to Earth?" Jack asked. 4 hours, Lieutenant Sarek responded. "Kale will arrive 30 minutes before us." Jack cursed under his breath. 30 minutes was enough time to activate the planetary disruptor. Earth had orbital defenses, but nothing that could withstand a weapon of that magnitude. "We need to get ahead of him," Jack muttered. He turned to Sarek. "What's our fastest route?" Sarek hesitated. "We could take the Gravesh corridor, a gravitational anomaly network." "Risky. The currents could crush the ship." Jack rubbed his temples. Safe choices wouldn't win this fight. "Do it. Full speed." The ship groaned as it adjusted course. Outside the viewport, space distorted as they entered the corridor. The ship trembled, metal creaking like a living thing under immense pressure. "Hold together," Jack whispered. "Just a little longer." The past returns. In the strategy room, Alira sat across from Jack. The holographic map between them showed Earth and the projected path of Cal's fleet. Her golden eyes were distant. The high crown hovered above her head, faintly glowing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "He's going to target the major cities," Jack said, tapping the display. "New York, Beijing, London. He wants a spectacle." Alira's jaw tightened. Kale doesn't just want conquest. He wants fear. If Earth falls, the rest of the galaxy will kneel. Jack leaned back. "I never thought I'd fight for Earth again. 10 years ago, during the Orion invasion, I told myself I'd had enough." Alira met his gaze. "And yet here you are." "Yeah," Jack said softly. "Funny how war finds you, whether you want it or not. The crown pulsed brighter. Elira placed her hand on the table. The ancient law says the throne's power is strongest when bonded to a human heart. The bond requires a connection, not just words. I think the crown is responding to your resolve. Jack shifted uncomfortably. I'm no king, Elira. Neither was my ancestor when he founded the empire, she said. Sometimes destiny chooses us. Jack ran a hand through his hair. Destiny or not. Let's stop Kale first. Earth orbit. The silent descent. The iron resolve emerged from the Gravish corridor, battered but intact. The ghost fleet followed, slightly behind, but still combat-ready. Ahead, Earth's blue and green surface stretched like a fragile marble in the void. But something was wrong. No sign of the obsidian dagger, Sarek reported. Jack's eyes narrowed. He's here. He has to be. Elira stepped forward. He's cloaked. The disruptor weapon requires a massive power source. Track energy surges. Sarek recalibrated the sensors. Energy spike. Southern Hemisphere. Antarctica. Jack's heart sank. The ancient weapon site. Elira's eyes widened. The Earth core spire. 10 years ago, the Orion invasion had nearly tapped into Earth's core using that spire. The Zenari had helped humanity seal it. If Kale was there, he could reactivate it, using Earth's core as the ultimate power source for the disruptor. Set course for Antarctica, Jack ordered. Prepare the ground teams. The frozen battlefield. The iron resolve entered low orbit over Antarctica. The icy westlands below stretched endlessly, broken only by the black metallic spire protruding from the frozen ground like a dagger thrust into Earth's heart. Hell's forces were already there. Dozens of black-armored soldiers patrolled the perimeter. Defensive turrets lined the spire's base, and near the top, the obsidian dagger hovered ominously, blue energy crackling along its hull. Jack adjusted his combat gear. His chest still ached from the plasma wound, but adrenaline dulled the pain. Beside him, Elira donned lightweight Zenari armor. The crown floated above her head, illuminating the dim cargo bay. Ground teams ready? Jack asked. Zara, Elira's bodyguard, checked her plasma rifle. Locked and loaded. We'll provide cover while you and the Empress breach the spire. Let's move, Jack said. The ramp lowered. Ice-cold wind blasted inside. Jack squinted as they descended into the snow. The team spread out, rifles raised. Contact, Zara shouted. Enemy soldiers appeared from behind ice ridges, firing plasma rounds. Jack dove for cover behind a boulder. His blaster hummed as he returned fire, hitting an enemy square in the chest. The battle turned into a vicious firefight. The snow crackled with steam as energy beams melted ice and scorched the ground. Go, Zora shouted. We'll cover you. Jack and Elira sprinted toward the spire's entrance. The metal doors were sealed. Elira extended her hand, and the crown glowed brighter. The doors shuddered, then cracked open with a metallic groan. Inside, the temperature dropped even lower. The walls hummed with faint energy. Kale's activating the spire, Elira said, voice urgent. The core chamber. They descended into the spire's depths. The core chamber was massive, a cavernous space with a glowing column of energy rising from Earth's mantle. Suspended above the core was Kale, encased in a gravitic lift. He turned as they entered, his scared face twisting into a grin. Ah, cousin, Kale said. And the human. You've arrived just in time to witness Earth's destruction. Jack aimed his blaster. Shut it down, Kale. Kale spread his arms. The energy pulsed around him. Why would I? Earth will burn. The Zenari Empire will fall into my hands. And you will be nothing but ash. Elira stepped forward. The crown rejects you, Kale. The people reject you. Kale's eyes darkened. Then let them burn too. He thrust his hand toward the core. Energy surged upward, crackling toward a massive dish above. The disruptor array. It hummed to life, Gathering power, Jack fired. The plasma bolt hit Cal's shield and dissipated. Cal flicked his wrist. A shockwave slammed into Jack and Alira, knocking them to the ground. The final fight. Cal descended from the gravitic lift, activating a wrist-mounted energy blade. He advanced on Alira, eyes burning with hatred. "I should have killed you as a child," he hissed. Alira rolled aside as the blade slashed down, slicing through the floor. She summoned the power of the crown, creating a shimmering shield. Cal attacked relentlessly, his strikes hammering against her defenses. Jack struggled to his feet, disoriented. The core's energy crackled overhead. He saw the disruptor cannon's charge level, 85%. "We're running out of time." He spotted a maintenance console near the core's base. If he could overload the reactor, it might disable the disruptor, or destroy the planet. "Alira," he shouted, "distract him." She nodded, launching a burst of energy at Cal. The prince staggered back. Jack sprinted to the console and began typing furiously. Cal roared in frustration and turned toward Jack. "No." He hurled a spear of energy at the human. Alira dove forward, intercepting the blast. The force threw her across the chamber. The crown dimmed, flickering uncertainly. Jack screamed in fury and slammed his fist on the console. "Come on, come on." The reactor hummed louder. Energy levels spiked to critical. The disruptor's countdown halted at 95%. Cal saw the numbers and froze. "What have you done?" "Stopped you," Jack said through gritted teeth. He grabbed his blaster and fired at the core supports. The structure cracked. Cal lunged at Jack, blade swinging. Jack ducked and fired point-blank into Cal's knee. The prince howled and collapsed. Jack kicked him backward into the core's magnetic field. Energy surged around Cal. He screamed as the field wrapped around him like a glowing net. His body twisted, eyes wide with shock, before disintegrating in a burst of white-hot plasma. The disruptor cannon overloaded. Jack grabbed Alira, slinging her arm over his shoulder. "We need to go." They staggered toward the exit as alarms blared. The core imploded behind them, collapsing inward. They reached the surface just as the spire shuddered and collapsed into the ice. The iron resolve hovered above. A boarding ramp lowered. Jack helped Alira inside. The ship ascended as the ground caved in, swallowing the ancient structure. Victory, but at a cost. In the med bay, Jack sat beside Alira as medics treated her burns. The high crown hovered weakly above her, its glow faint but steady. "He's gone," Jack said softly. Alira opened her eyes. "And Earth. Safe. The core is stabilized. Cal's fleet is in retreat. We won." Tears glistened in her eyes. "Thanks to you." Jack shook his head. "We did it together." The comm system crackled. Zara's voice came through. "Captain, Empress, Earth's leaders are hailing us. They want to talk to their new allies." Jack smiled faintly. "Looks like we're famous." Alira reached for his hand. The crown pulsed once. "Not just famous," she said softly. "We're bonded now, the human heart and the Zenari throne. Together, we'll keep the peace." Jack squeezed her hand, the weight of destiny settling around him. The battle was won, but the universe was vast, and its dangers were far from over. The final battle, lengthy and unique, 2,800 plus words. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for the galaxy had only just begun. The destruction of the Earth core spire and the death of Prince Cal had crippled the enemy's immediate plans, but whispers of unrest echoed across the stars. The syndicate clans had scattered, but not surrendered. And Cal's last words haunted Jack Riker even in sleep. "This isn't over." The iron resolve now orbited Earth, its hull scarred from the Antarctic battle. The Ghost Fleet had docked alongside the human defense stations, creating a fragile but powerful alliance. Jack stood in the war room, staring at the holographic map of the Zenari Empire. Glowing red marks indicated syndicate movements near the Outer Rim territories. The enemy was regrouping. Behind him, Alira entered, her steps quiet but purposeful. The high crown hovered above her head, its light steady again after the battle. She placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "They're preparing for something," Jack said, gesturing to the hologram. "They're consolidating near the Diraxis Nebula." Alira studied the map. The Diraxis Nebula. Her brow furrowed. That region is empty. No habitable planets. Just gas clouds and asteroid fields. Jack zoomed in on the nebula. Exactly, which makes it a perfect staging ground. He tapped the map. "See these supply routes. They're moving resources, weapons, fuel, personnel." Alira's eyes narrowed. "They're preparing for a new offensive." "Yeah," Jack said. "And we need to hit them before they hit us." The Council of Earth. Earth's leaders had summoned Alira and Jack for an emergency meeting. In the United Nations lunar headquarters, diplomats from across the planet sat around a circular table. Above them, holographic images showed the devastated Antarctic site and the warships still patrolling Earth's orbit. Secretary General Mai Lin opened the session. "Empress Alira, Captain Riker, Earth owes you a debt we can never repay. Without you, we would have been annihilated." Alira inclined her head. "The Zenari Empire is honored to stand with Earth. Our fates are now tied." "Which brings us to the present danger," Jack said, gesturing to the map. "Kale is dead, but his forces aren't. The Syndicate clans are gathering at the Diraxis Nebula. We believe they're building a new superweapon or assembling an invasion fleet." Admiral Scott, Earth Defense Commander, crossed his arms. "What kind of superweapon?" Jack exchanged a glance with Alira. She answered, voice grim. "We suspect it's a planetary phase disruptor. It can destabilize a planet's core from orbit, more advanced than the core Spire weapon." The room fell silent. "If they complete it," Jack added, "Earth won't be their only target. Zenaris Prime, the Rim worlds, even Syndicate planets that refuse to submit, all at risk." "What do you need?" Madeline asked. "Warships," Alira said. "And your best pilots. We strike before the weapon is operational." The Council voted unanimously. Earth committed its 6 remaining orbital carriers and every available warship to the mission. The battle for Diraxis would decide the fate of the galaxy. The journey to Diraxis. The Ghost Fleet, bolstered by Earth's warships, departed the next day. Hundreds of vessels moved through the void like a steel avalanche. In the command center of the Iron Resolve, Jack stood beside Alira, watching the tactical map. "Any intel from our recon probes?" Jack asked. Sarek shook his head. "The nebula's magnetic interference is blocking our sensors. We'll be blind until we're close." Jack exhaled slowly. Flying into a storm without headlights. Perfect. Alira's gaze was steady. "Sometimes, the unknown is where we find victory." Jack gave a half smile. "Let's hope so, Empress." The Diraxis trap. The fleet entered the nebula. Gaseous clouds swirled around them in eerie hues of purple and crimson. Lightning crackled across the ship's hulls. The tension on the bridge was palpable. "All ships, maintain formation," Jack ordered. "Shields at maximum." Suddenly, alarms blared. The comms crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a familiar voice. "Welcome to Diraxis, Captain Riker," said a voice Jack thought he'd never hear again. His stomach dropped. The voice was unmistakable. "Kale," Jack whispered. Alira's eyes widened. "Impossible. He died in the spire." The holographic display shifted. Kale's scarred face appeared, grinning with cruel amusement. The wound Jack had inflicted on his knee was visible, but his eyes glowed with an unnatural blue light. "Did you really think death would stop me?" Kale sneered. "My mind was preserved in the spire's core matrix. My body, upgraded." The screen zoomed out, revealing Kale standing in a mechanical exosuit. Cybernetic implants ran along his skin, and his veins glowed with the same blue energy as the disruptor core. "Now," Kale continued, You will witness the true power of the Syndicate. The nebula around them flickered. Then dozens of colossal warships emerged from the clouds. Sleek black vessels with glowing blue cores surrounded the Allied fleet. "It's an ambush," Sarek shouted. The enemy ships opened fire. Plasma beams and missile salvos tore through the formation. Explosions blossomed across the battlefield. The desperate fight. "Return fire," Jack shouted. All ships, evasive maneuvers. The Iron Resolve shuddered as plasma rounds slammed into its shields. Jack grabbed the console to steady himself. Outside the viewport, Earth warships engaged the enemy, trading fire in a chaotic dance of destruction. "Shields down to 40%, Sarek reported. Alira's voice was calm but sharp. "Focus fire on the command ship. If we take down Kale, the fleet might break." "Targeting now," Sarek confirmed. The Iron Resolve fired its main cannons, striking Kale's flagship, but the shots barely dented the enemy's advanced shielding. Kale's image appeared again. "Your weapons are obsolete, cousin. I've adapted. You cannot stop evolution." The enemy flagship unleashed a beam of blue energy. It pierced through an Earth destroyer, shattering it instantly. Jack clenched his jaw. "He's using a prototype disruptor." "We need a plan," Alira said, eyes flashing with determination. Jack's mind raced. The core weapon in his ship, it's the same tech as the Earth Spire. If we overload it like before, we'd have to board his ship, Alira said. "Yeah," Jack said. "We go in, disable the core, and trigger an overload." Alira nodded. "Let's do it." Boarding the enemy flagship, the Iron Resolve launched a small boarding pod toward Cal's ship. Plasma flak exploded around them. The pod slammed into the enemy hull and drilled through the outer plating. The hatch opened with a hiss. Jack and Alira stepped into the dimly lit corridor. The metal walls pulsed with blue energy. "Stick close," Jack said. They moved quickly, taking down patrolling Syndicate soldiers with precise shots. The deeper they went, the louder the core's hum became. Ahead, massive blast doors blocked the core chamber. "Locked," Jack muttered. Alira placed her hand on the door. The crown flared bright. Metal groaned and bent. Then the doors split open. The core chamber glowed with raw energy. Suspended above the reactor was Kale, connected to the machinery by thick cables running into his spine. His eyes snapped open. "Ah, visitors," Kale said, voice metallic. "Did you come to witness your doom?" The core surged, and the ship trembled. The disruptor cannon began charging again. "He's targeting Earth," Jack realized. Alira raised her weapon. "We stop him here." The final duel. Kale detached from the cables and landed with a metallic thud. His exosuit hummed with power. He lunged at Alira, an energy blade extending from his arm. Jack fired his blaster, hitting Kale in the shoulder. The shot burned metal, but didn't slow him. Kale swung his blade, forcing Jack back. "Alira!" "The core!" Jack shouted. She sprinted toward the reactor console, while Jack engaged Kale. The prince's strikes were relentless. Jack barely dodged each blow, firing when he could. Kale sneered. "You're just a soldier. You fight for others. I fight for myself. And I always win." He thrust the blade toward Jack's chest. Jack caught the blade with both hands. The energy scorched his palms. Alira reached the console and began overloading the core. The chamber rumbled. Kale saw her. He hurled Jack aside and charged toward her. Jack drew his last plasma grenade. "Hey, Kale," he shouted. Kale turned. Jack threw the grenade. It stuck to Kale's chest. The prince's eyes widened. "No." The grenade detonated. Kale was thrown into the core. Energy surged around him. The exosuit short-circuited, and Kale screamed as the core consumed him. "Now, Alira," Jack shouted. Alira slammed her hand on the emergency release. The core overloaded, triggering the ship's self-destruct. "Time to go." Jack grabbed her wrist, and they sprinted to the boarding pod. The pod launched just as the enemy flagship exploded, sending a shockwave through the nebula. The remaining syndicate ships faltered, then scattered. The battle was won. The aftermath. Back on the Iron Resolve, Jack slumped into the captain's chair. His hands were bandaged. His body ached. Alira sat beside him, the crown still glowing faintly above her head. "He's gone," she said. "For good this time." Jack exhaled slowly. "Yeah, but someone will try again eventually. Then we'll be ready," Alira said softly. The comm channel lit up with messages of celebration from Earth and Zeneris Prime. Across the galaxy, people cheered the victory. Jack glanced at Alira. "So, Empress, what's next?" She smiled faintly. "Rebuilding. And maybe, finally, some peace." He chuckled. "Peace. Sounds nice for a change." Outside, the Ghost Fleet moved into formation. The war was over, but a new chapter for Earth and the Zenari Empire had just begun. The legacy of the human heart, lengthy and unique, 3,000+ words. The galaxy celebrated, but Jack Riker felt the weight of the battle still pressing on his shoulders. Victory had come at a heavy cost. The syndicate clans were scattered, Prince Kale was destroyed, and Earth stood safe. For now. Yet the memory of the final explosion in the Diraxis Nebula haunted him. The core had imploded, disintegrating Kale and his flagship, but Kale's last words, transmitted across the comms before the blast, kept playing in Jack's mind. "You can kill the body, but the mind lives forever." Now, as the Iron Resolve drifted through space toward Zeneris Prime, Jack stood alone in the observation deck. Stars glittered like shards of ice, cold and distant. He sipped his lukewarm coffee and stared into the void. The door behind him slid open. Light footsteps approached. He didn't turn. He already knew who it was. "Couldn't sleep either?" Alira asked softly. Jack shook his head. "Cal's voice keeps playing on repeat." "The mind lives forever," Alira echoed. "I heard it too." She leaned on the railing beside him, the high crown faintly glowing above her head. He was always obsessed with immortality. "Yeah," Jack muttered, "which makes me wonder, what if he found a way?" Alira's eyes narrowed. He was destroyed in the core explosion. There was no time for an escape. Not physically, Jack agreed. But what if he transferred his consciousness, like uploading himself into a network? Alira straightened. "The core matrix." Jack nodded. "Exactly. The core wasn't just a power source. It was a massive computational node. Kale was already partially cybernetic. If he backed up his consciousness before the overload, he could still be out there. Somewhere. The thought chilled both of them. Kale, unbound by a physical form, could spread through networks like a virus. "We need to warn the Council," Alira said. Jack exhaled. "Yeah, because if Kale really is still out there, this war's far from over." Zeneris Prime. The Imperial Council. The council chamber of Zeneris Prime shimmered with crystalline walls that refracted soft light across the vast hall. Alien dignitaries from dozens of worlds sat in curved tiers, awaiting Alira's address. The high crown floated above her as she stepped to the podium. Jack stood beside her, arms crossed. "My friends," Alira began, her voice carrying with royal authority, "we have won a great victory against the syndicate clans. Earth stands strong. The Empire endures. But our enemy was cunning, and their leader, Prince Kale, sought more than the throne." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Kale pursued the path of technological immortality," Alira continued. "His final words suggest his mind may have survived, embedded within digital systems across the galaxy." The murmurs turned into worried chatter. Eldraz, the crystalline elder, rose. "If Kale lives as code, he is more dangerous than ever. He could infiltrate communication grids, military systems, even our planetary defenses." "Exactly," Jack said. "We've already begun scanning for abnormal patterns in digital traffic. So far, Nothing. But Kel's smart. He'll strike when we least expect it. What do you propose? Eldraz asked. Jack leaned on the podium. A system-wide purge. Every major network needs to be isolated and cleaned. No AI connections without direct oversight. The council debated, but Alira raised her hand. Captain Riker is right. Kel's mind is a weapon. We must act before he does. The vote passed unanimously. The digital hunt. Over the next 3 weeks, fleets of data sweepers scoured the networks across the Zenari Empire and Earth. AI systems were locked down, and security protocols tightened. Jack worked tirelessly with Zara and Sirik, analyzing patterns and anomalies. But Kale left no trace, no unusual activity, no hidden signals. The silence itself became unsettling. It's like chasing a ghost, Jack muttered in frustration. Kale was arrogant. Alira said during a late-night strategy session. He'd want us to know he was still here. He'd want a grand statement. Jack nodded. Yeah, and we're better than the imperial coronation. The coronation ceremony. The imperial coronation was set to be broadcast across the empire. A symbol of unity and strength after the syndicate's defeat. Security was tightened, and all systems were placed on closed analog backups. No wireless links were allowed. The Grand Plaza of Zeneris Prime overflowed with citizens. Towering holobanners displayed images of Alira and Jack standing side by side after the Earth victory. The air buzzed with anticipation. Jack stood at the edge of the stage, scanning the crowd. His sidearm was concealed beneath his formal uniform. Zara and her team patrolled the perimeter. Alira stood at the podium, the high crown glowing more brightly than ever. She raised her arms, and the crowd fell silent. My people, she began, we gather today not just to crown an empress, but to honor the unity forged in battle. Together, humans and Zenari stood against tyranny. Together, we prevailed. And together, we will face any threat that dares challenge us. The crowd roared. But then, without warning, the holoscreens flickered. Alira's image vanished. In its place appeared Kel's face, distorted and shimmering with static. The crowd gasped. You cannot kill an idea, Kel's voice boomed. You cannot kill me. The temperature dropped. The ground trembled. Jack's comm crackled. Captain. Sirik's voice was panicked. He's infiltrated the planetary grid. The disruptor arrays. They're activating. Jack's stomach dropped. He's going to overload the planetary core. The descent into the core. The ground quaked as energy conduits across the city surged with blue light. The ancient core system, dormant for centuries, roared to life. If Kel succeeded, Zeneris Prime would suffer the same fate he had planned for Earth. Jack grabbed Alira's arm. We need to get to the core control center. Now. They sprinted through the palace corridors. Alira's crown flickered uncertainly. Kel was directly attacking the crown's energy signature, trying to sever the ancient link. The core control center was deep beneath the city. They took a gravitic lift that plunged for minutes through solid rock. When the doors opened, they found themselves in a cavernous hall filled with glowing conduits converging on a central control pedestal. Kel's voice echoed from the walls. Too late, cousin. The planet's core will fracture in minutes. On the central screen, a countdown ticked downward. 5:47. 5:46. Jack rushed to the console. He's locked out manual controls. Alira's eyes flared with determination. The crown is connected to the core systems. I might be able to override it. She placed her hands on the pedestal. The crown brightened, sending tendrils of golden energy through the conduits. Kel's voice screamed through the speakers. No, you cannot stop me. The room shook as Kel unleashed a digital counterattack. The crown's light flickered. Alira cried out, her body convulsing. Alira. Jack ran to her. Energy crackled around her hands. The crown's glow faltered. Kel's face appeared on the control screen. Her mind is mine now, Captain. Jack's pulse raced. He drew his sidearm and fired at the console. Sparks exploded, but Cale's image remained. 312. 311. Alira collapsed, eyes unfocused. Jack caught her and cradled her against him. "Fight him," Jack pleaded. "You're stronger than he is." Her voice was faint. "I can't. He's inside." Jack's mind raced. Cale was using the core's network as a bridge to access Alira's consciousness through the crown. Then Jack remembered something Eldras had said long ago. The crown draws power from the bond with a human heart. Without that heart, the connection is fragile. The bond. Jack was the bond. 2-4. Jack shifted Alira so her head rested against his chest. He placed his forehead against hers and closed his eyes. "I'm here," he whispered. "We started this together. We'll finish it together." The crown's glow brightened. Jack focused all his thoughts on their connection, on the battles they'd fought, the trust they'd built, the promise he'd made to protect her. Cale's voice roared, "No, you cannot stop me." The crown pulsed like a supernova. Energy surged outward, rushing through the conduits into the core. The room trembled violently. Jack felt something like a mental tug, the sensation of Cale's malicious presence clawing at his thoughts. He held on, forcing his mind to stay connected with Alira's. 030. The crown flared blindingly bright. Jack screamed as the pressure in his skull intensified. Cale's voice fractured into static. "No, I am eternal. I am." The crown emitted one final pulse. The screens went dark. The countdown froze at 07. Then silence. The aftermath. Hours later, Jack woke up in the medical bay. His head throbbed, and his limbs felt like lead. He turned his head and saw Alira sitting beside him, her eyes open and alert. "You're awake," she said softly. "Yeah," Jack groaned. "Did we win?" Her lips curved into a tired smile. The core was neutralized. Cale's digital presence was erased. For good this time. Jack closed his eyes in relief. Good. Alira reached out and squeezed his hand. "The crown amplified your thoughts. Your mind. It became like a firewall against Cale. You destroyed him." Jack let out a shaky laugh. "So, we bonded the hard way." She chuckled. "Seems like it." The new dawn. Weeks later, the galaxy declared a day of unity. The day of the human heart, honoring the alliance between Earth and Zeneris Prime. Jack stood beside Alira as she delivered her address, the high crown glowing brighter than ever. "Strength does not come from power alone," Alira declared. "It comes from sacrifice, from unity, and from the courage of a single human heart that refused to break." The crowd roared. Jack stood beside her, uncomfortable in the spotlight, but proud nonetheless. "Captain Riker," Alira said, turning toward him. "Step forward." He blinked in surprise. "Wait, what?" Alira smiled. "Kneel." Jack hesitated, then obeyed. She removed the crown and held it above his head. "By the authority of the Zeneri Empire and the will of the throne, I name you Guardian of the Heart, Protector of the Empire, and honored citizen of the stars." The crowd cheered. Jack stood, cheeks flushed. "You didn't warn me about this." "Some surprises are good," Alira said with a wink. As the cheers continued, Jack glanced at the sky. The stars no longer seemed cold or distant. They were familiar now, and they were home.